looks cute. Wait, hold on. I want to show you guys I look at my cool board. Ooh. Hello, and we're back with another food history. You guys could tell by the title, but this is a food history. I am so excited about this for a multitude of reasons. One, it's an insane story. Two, it's still connected to food. I am gonna get to parts of food where I'm like, yo, where did frozen pizza come from? Can't wait to figure that out. Can't wait to dive in. Probably no murder involved there, but maybe. But this food history mystery blew my mind, and it's been like all consuming my life. So I wanted to share it with you guys. This past week, I went to visit my mom in Texas. And if you guys have ever been to Texas, you know that there is a lot of driving that goes on. And we were listening to some podcasts. One that I've been listening to recently that I've been really liking is Stuff You Should Know. I really like them. They're so sweet. They're like such little sweetsy boys. It's not necessarily a true crime podcast. It's kind of just exactly what it says it is. Stuff you should know. Interesting little facts. They're really, really incredible podcasters. And one of the episodes was like 10 unsolved mysteries. So they kind of just spent like 5 minutes on each thing and kept moving on. And one of their last ones was the disappearance of Helen Brock. And I was like, couldn't be Brock of Brock's Candy. 'Twas f***ing what's up, dude? So then I fell down a hole, obviously. I got most of my information from another podcast called True Crime All the Time, a documentary that I found on YouTube, and I am just so invested. So that's where all my information's coming from. So thank you to those incredible resources for providing so much cool information. I'm gonna tell you all about the story of Helen Brock. And what a story it is. Okay, so Helen Brock was born Helen Voorhees. She was born in 1911 in Ohio, little town in Ohio. She grew up basically on a farm. Her life wasn't super fancy growing up. Her dad was a streetcar driver and her mom was a stay-at-home mom. She also had a brother named Charles. Now, Helen was always very pretty growing up. A lot of people liked her. She was very, very sweet, really cute redhead. However, she didn't always have the best luck in love. She dated her high school sweetheart all throughout high school, and then they got married, and by the time she was 21, she got divorced. Then she keeps living her life, and when she turns 39, so this is 1950, she's finally saved up enough money where she can move to Florida to get a fresh start. Good for her, especially in 1950, being 39. She had been divorced, like that was not an easy thing for her to do. And so she would say, I want to marry a rich man, I want to just like keep living my life and be happy. Good for her. So she's down in Florida. She's moved to Florida and she's working at a country club. Smart girl, Helen. And she's working as a hat girl, a coat girl, like in the little room where people give you the stuff and she gives you a ticket, whatever. That's where she meets the Candy King of Chicago, Mr. Frank Brock. He is 61 at the time and married. He and his wife were on very rocky terms. Not that makes it better, but whatever. It is what it is. He ends up getting divorced and they get together. They get married and they're actually like so beyond fatal for each other. Like it is what she wanted. She did say she wanted to marry a rich man, but I really believe that they like actually loved each other so much, which is very sweet. And at this point, Frank had inherited like a lot of money from his Candy family. So Helen's literally a sugar baby. Love that for her. He's like multi-millionaire, doing really well. He's totally obsessed with his new wife. They are so cute together. He buys her luxury cars that are like pink and white. Like he buys her like a pink and white Cadillac because that's the color of Brock's candies. He buys her a lavender Rolls Royce. To my knowledge, I couldn't find it anywhere. It didn't look like they had any kids. So it was kind of just them. And Helen has always been a big animal lover. So they did do a lot of stuff with animals, be it like she would take in a lot of stray dogs and stuff, or they would donate a lot to animal societies. And also, much like a lot of the people in Chicago, they were very interested in like the horse world, be it horse races, horse shows, etc., etc. Brock's is located in Chicago. So they're all settled in this very nice area of Chicago called Glenview. They have a huge like 18-room mansion in Glenview. They have a place on an island somewhere in Chicago too that's like their summer home. They have a place in Florida that's like their winter home. They're doing okay. Nobody's too concerned about Helen and Frank Brock. But they're also like very fun, affable people. Like a lot of people really liked both of them. So then we cut forward to 1966. Frank has sold Brock's, but is still like sitting on the chair and stuff, but he made like double. So they were rolling in it even more. Good for them. However, unfortunately, time goes by. Frank is getting older and older. And in 1970, Frank passes away at 70. Okay. No respect for the deceased. And unfortunately, in 1970, Frank passes away. He's 76 years old, and it was really, really hard for Helen because she loved him. They were together for 15 years. Like, they were super fatal for each other, and she was really sad to lose her husband and her partner and her best friend. She also wasn't the most social person in the world, so it's not like she had a ton of super close girlfriends or anything like that. She was much more interested in Frank and her animals and her antiques and her car, you know, things like that. Like, she was a creature of habit. She liked doing what she liked doing. When Frank passed away, he did leave her $30 million. He basically left everything he had to Helen. Helen still was super heartbroken, super sad, and really poured herself into her animal societies and things like that. While she did really enjoy the high life and luxury and her antiques and her cars, etc., she never felt super, super comfy and fully herself with all of these high-end luxury things. She grew up in Ohio. She grew up with, not the most wealthy family in the world. I think she sort of just treaded a little bit lightly, but still dipped her feet in for sure. And at this point, Frank is gone. She's not super close with a lot of her girlfriends, and she puts a lot of time into her animals, her stray dogs. The person who she's closest to at this point is her houseman, which is what she called him. I think he used to be called the butler. My understanding is that she felt that wasn't a super great name for what he did, so she called him the houseman. His name was Jack Matlick. Jack Matlick took care of a lot of stuff for her. He kept up the grounds of the estate, helped her pack, helped her move stuff around, helped her get appointments in order, took her places, took care of the cars, things like that. He was very much the number two guy kind of thing. And he was super close with her because he had worked there for a really long time. But she wasn't completely lonely. She did have her girlfriends, and a lot of them were oh, you love animals, maybe come hang out in the horse world. We like horses and being rich. And Helen was I like horses and being rich. Wouldn't we all? So she's getting more entrenched in this horse world. Killer. Live your life, Helen. Not for too long. It's 1973. She meets the young, 20 years younger than she is, Richard Bailey. Richard Bailey. This guy is the playboy of the horse world. They're all such rich people things to be he's the horse playboy. Richard Bailey is this 20-year younger, very charming, very attractive to some people. Not my type. Sorry, Richard. Very charismatic guy. Very familiar with the horse world. Very familiar with the luxe life of Chicago at the time in the 70s. Now, the thing about Richard Bailey is what Helen did not know yet was that he was well known in this horse world for befriending older, wealthier women and selling them horses. So she kind of fell for the thing he did, which is not super crazy. She's a lonely older woman who lost her husband, who was her best friend. They were super tight. And now there's this new younger man coming around, taking her out to dinner, giving her company, being there for her. And it's not crazy that she started to really spend a lot of time with him. And they had super similar upbringings. They were both from lower middle class families, small towns, things like that. So they related a lot. So the thing about the horses that Richard Bailey was selling was that they were not good horses. And when I say good, I don't mean that they weren't cute or nice. I just mean they weren't worth these hundreds of $1,000 price tags that Bailey was putting on them. They were just kind of older horses. Some of them were sick. Some of them had some health issues. He was selling these horses that he would buy for $2-3 grand at $100,000 price tag. After Bailey would make Helen Brock her favorite lamb chop dinners, she decided, yeah, maybe I'll buy a horse or 3. Helen bought 3 horses from Richard Bailey at $100,000 for all 3. He had purchased these horses for about $20,000 for all 3. She did find out that these horses were not winners. They were not winning a lot of shows. They were not what he promised they were. And she didn't love that, but she also really liked his company. But there was something she was a little suspicious about. Whatever. She still wanted to keep him around. She was a little suspicious, but at this point, that's all we know. They spend New Year's Eve together, champagne, hanging out, ringing in the year of 1977. And her plan was always to spend the winter of 1977, like January, February, in her Florida home because she really liked being there when it was too cold in Chicago. And sometimes she would invite Richard Bailey to spend that time with her there. And since Helen is this multimillionaire, let's not forget that she is somebody who is now, even though it's not always been her biggest comfort, she is used to the finer things in life now. So she wouldn't just go to the doctor and get a checkup in Chicago. She would go to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota for a week at a time for her annual checkup. So she did things like that. She was a bit eccentric. When you got $30 million, why not go to the Mayo Clinic, It's been 5 days. They give her a clean bill of health. They say, Helen Brock, you're crushing it. Great job. You go keep making caramels. And she said, love it. Thank you so much. See you next year. Here's where things get tricky. Helen Brock leaves the Mayo Clinic. She stops at the Buckskin gift shop in Minnesota and picks up a couple little gifts. She was getting something for her niece that she was gonna see, and she very clearly told the cashier, can you hurry up? My houseman is waiting for me. I have to get to the airport. So she was leaving Minnesota to fly back to Chicago, and Jack Matlick was gonna pick her up. This is the last time anybody saw Helen Brock alive. Now, Jack Matlick would beg to differ. Jack Matlick says, no, I picked her up from the airport, and then I brought her back home. It was just her and I in the house for the weekend. And then I was taking her to the airport to go to Florida. So I took her to the airport to go to Florida, and then I never saw her again. That's odd, because why did nobody see her on the flight from Minnesota to Chicago? Her ticket was used. It wasn't this crazy screening system, bring your ID, who are you? Are you the person on your ticket? Oh, this name is spelled wrong, you look different, da-da-da. It was here's a ticket for this flight, I'm going on. And everyone was stellar. Nobody saw her get on the plane. We have to give it to flight attendants. They see thousands of people a day sometimes. Maybe they didn't remember. Maybe Jack Matlick did pick her up. But hold on, she's apparently home all weekend. Jack Matlick says it's very normal, very quiet weekend. It's just him and her in the house. She has one meeting when he's questioned by police. She disappears, and then the police start questioning everybody that's close to her. And he says, no, I picked her up from the airport. Everything was fine. She had one meeting. I didn't really know who it was with, but just looked like a man I had never seen before. And then I took her to the airport, and then she, poof, disappeared. At this point, Richard Bailey has been in Helen's life for years, probably 3-4 years at this point. So Jack Matlick knows who he is. Richard had been invited to meet her down in Florida at her Florida house. She was gonna spend her time in the Florida house this winter with Richard. And when she didn't show up, Richard called the Chicago house and said, hey, Jack, can I speak to Helen? And he said, well, why? What's going on? And Richard says, well, I'm in Florida and I was supposed to meet her here and she's not here. And Jack said, oh, well, I thought I saw you this weekend at this meeting she had. Well, Jack, I thought you didn't know who the man was. As much as Helen wasn't a social butterfly, she did have some girlfriends. About 4 of them tried to call her this weekend to see how the Mayo Clinic went. Jack picked up. Oh, she's not here. Oh, she's busy. Oh, she can't come to the phone right now. So already some sketchiness coming from Jack Matlick. He was staunch in the fact that he was no, I swear, I took her to the airport to go to Florida. There was never a ticket bought under her name. There was no reservation on the plane under her name. Very sketch. Also, he was forging checks for multiple checks for a total amount of $13,000. He was forging her name on checks made out to him for $13,000. And another weird thing about Jack Matlick, him and Helen's brother, they burned all of her diaries and important papers. They also burned the note that said, please burn all of my diaries and important papers if anything ever happens to me. There's so much of this story that sounds like a 4-year-old who's trying to get away with murder.
Oh, sorry. There actually was a note that said, to actually burn everything, all the evidence, just in case anything ever happened to me. So but that note got lost.
But, of course, they can't only look at Jack. There's also this young man who's been, whining and dining Helen Brock for quite some time, sold her, there's been quite a good exchange of money in between them. Richard Bailey is now brought into the picture for questioning as well. But Bailey, of course, says, no, I have no idea what happened to Helen. I was waiting in Florida for her and she never showed up. I actually thought that was her like dumping me, like I thought she was standing me up. What we find out later is that Helen had been talking to some of her girlfriends in the horse world and they were like, Richard Bailey is bad f***ing news. He's selling bad horses that like he's marking the price up 100 times and blah, 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 blah. He played you. Like, this is horse fraud, which there's a thing in the world called horse fraud. Helen brought this up to Richard and was like, you fucking cheated me out of money? Like, who do you think you are? She was gonna bring him to the authorities after their Florida trip. For Richard Bailey, there was this threat that she was gonna bring him to the authorities and sue him for horse fraud. So he was getting nervous, but he swears that he has no idea what happened to Helen. Oh my God, he's heartbroken. Helen is both of these men's almost main and only source of income. It's not looking good for Richard and Jack, I'll tell you what. But super unfortunately, because there is not a murder weapon or a body found, the police cannot do much. She is declared officially deceased in 1984. The bulk of her $30 million fortune went to all of the animal charities and beautiful animal societies that she supported, which I think is very, very cool that she donated so much of that money. Charles got $500,000, Jack Matlock got $50,000, but the bulk of it was given to animal charities. But this wasn't just any old story. Every disappearance is heartbreaking and terrifying. But this was one of the ones that like got the whole city of Chicago like, whatever happened? Like, we're so interested. Like, this was big news, and it still was years and years later. So in 1989, a US attorney named Steve Miller heard some rumblings of a new lawsuit that sprouted up, a $50,000 lawsuit against Richard Bailey from another elderly, wealthy woman. That sort of like re-sparked Steve's interest in the Helen Brock mystery. He was like, you know, I never got a good feeling about this Richard guy. I don't like how this went down. Let's dive in. Now, the more that Miller looked into this, the more he found out that Bailey was sued by a lot of women. And Miller came up with this methodology called follow the fraud, solve the murder. So he really felt that if he kept on Richard Bailey, that he would be able to figure out the disappearance and likely murder of Helen Brock. I'm sorry, this story's a little like crazy, but basically Richard Bailey got conned. Like early on in his life, he got horse conned. So what had happened to Bailey was he met the Jane gang, or the horse mafia. He actually bought a horse from them, then he sort of fell into that crime situation of all this horse fraud. All of their crime was like centered around these wealthy horse enthusiasts of Chicago. Now, something that I learned in researching this story, which was just crazy, is that like horse fraud is very much a thing. Like some of these racehorses, dude, like the horses that are racing in the Kentucky Derby and all of these crazy races, some of them are worth millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. And when something is worth that much, you insure it. And where there is lots of insurance money to be had, there is often lots of crime to be had. There are people who murder these horses for insurance money. It's really upsetting and sad. And this is the world that Richard Bailey is kind of like falling into and becoming a part of. And there's another guy, not part of the Jane family. His name is Joe Plemons. He is another like shady horse trader who is in a lot of hot water. He's getting sued all over the place, a bunch of stuff. But Joe Plemons here's some rumblings about Richard Bailey getting caught and in trouble, and is like, I bet I can get out of my hot water a little bit if I tell them my Richard Bailey story. So Plemons is like, oh, Richard Bailey? Yeah, he asked me to kill Helen Brock and would give me $5,000 for it. All of this evidence, all of this craziness is stacking up against Richard Bailey. It's been about 5 years, and Steve Miller finally has enough to like prosecute this guy. I'm not sure if that's the right legal word. Indict him? The word indict was for sure used somewhere. Let's go with indict. It's been 5 years. Steve Miller finally has enough to indict. It's been 5 years. Stephen Miller finally has enough to indict Richard Bailey. There's like 29 counts of fraud. Oh my, like so many things. There were enough counts of fraud, I think, that he got a racketeering charge as well. He pleads guilty to 16 of the counts. The judge sentences him to 30 years in prison. And boy, oh boy, what a story. Jack Matlock obviously was super sketchy too. And a lot of people still have questions about him, but ultimately Richard Bailey was the one who went to prison, and for conspiracy of Helen Brock's murder. He was never actually charged with her murder. Jack Matlock was called to the stand, and his stories were still weird, but there wasn't enough evidence to get him there. So very unfortunately, the actual definitive answer of what happened to Helen Brock has never really come to fruition, which is really sad because she seemed like a really kind and giving, sort of just like eccentric, weird old lady. Like her friends really liked her, and she gave so much to animals, and she took in a lot of stray dogs, and you know, just seems like she had a really, really unfair end to a life that she, you know, seemed to really enjoy. Oh my God. She had like 2 dogs that were like her dogs, and their names were Candy and Sugar. Like Brock's candy. So that is the unfortunate and very sad story of the disappearance of Helen Brock. It sucks. And that's what's so tricky about cold cases. And well, in any case like this, like there are so many little things that come up where you're like, was this important or was this just a weird coincidence? Like that Plemons guy. Was he telling the truth about Bailey, or was he trying to get out of his own situation and just made up a lie? Because he was a con man guy too. That's it. That's the story. I really, really enjoyed learning about this and learning about the life of this very interesting woman who was unfortunately taken from us far too soon. But if you guys liked hearing about it, I would love to know what you thought. I would love to know if you guys had heard about this story before, because as much as I love true crime and food and candy, I had no idea that this was in existence. So leave in the comments below if you want to see more videos like this, if you have any stories that you want me to research, like that you would like to hear more about, or just if you knew about this at all, I would be super interested to hear. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for being here, and thank you for letting me do what I love to do. And I'll see you guys soon.